Hi, Monarch students. This is Ms. Kurganin. I'm going to lead you through your note catcher to take some notes about latitude, longitude, and time. So let me get this thing going. So far you've seen a short video about the coordinate system and GPS systems and how we use satellites to measure where we are on the planet with coordinates. And those coordinates correspond to a grid that we've overlaid over the Earth to try and figure out where we are at any point on the planet. This latitude and longitude system is what I'm going to break down for you here on how we come up with these lines. So latitude is the way that we measure the planet from the equator on up to the tippy top of the North Pole and down to the South Pole. So when we measure latitude, we're measuring north and south from the middle, from the equator. So it's better if I show you in a picture what I'm talking about. So this red line right here is the equator, and it's the fattest part of the planet. So I think of lat as fat, fat. So up here are slices of cake all the way up to the North Pole. And then those same slices of cake come on down here towards the South Pole. And in your notes, you're going to write that the latitude lines run east to west. So you should have first wrote down that latitude's measured north and south of the equator, that it runs east to west is how we measure, and that the latitude lines are longest at the equator, and then those slices of cake gets shorter and shorter and shorter at the poles. Latitude lines are parallel to one another. They never touch, they never intersect. And how many are there? Well, a straight line's 180 degrees, and this is a right angle, so half of 180 degrees is 90 degrees. So that's 90 degrees. There are 90 degrees up to the North Pole. There are 90 degrees down to the South Pole. So there's 180 lines of latitude in all. That's like half the planet. If I'm going too fast, these notes you can copy from the attachment at the bottom of this assignment. All right, next, important lines of latitude. We want you to know the North Pole, so I want you to write down 90 degrees north as the North Pole, that the Arctic Circle is right here at 66.5 degrees north, that the Tropic of Cancer is here at 23.5 degrees north, that 0 degrees is the equator, 23.5 degrees south is the Tropic of Capricorn, Antarctic Circle is 66.5 degrees, and then the South Pole's down here at 90 degrees south. How does the Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn have these funny names? Well, this section right here are the tropics. This is the beginning of the tropics. That's the end of the tropics. Tropics is hot. This also was a place of resources. Like if you think back in history, this is where all the explorers were trying to take over territory and force slaves to work and cash crops down here because it was long growing seasons. So much of this is exposed to the sun. Things can grow, but it's also crazy hot. The other thing I wanted to point out is why do they have Cancer and Capricorn as the wacky names? Well, seafarers, when they were cruising around, sailing around and taking over land, they would have to look up in the sky to the constellations to figure out where they were. So up here is where they could usually see the Cancer constellation, and then down here is where they could see the Capricorn constellation. And as far as those zodiacs, I'm a Sagittarius. All right, next is this is what it would look like with all those slices of cake going up, going down. And I think I've got, I got a freaky picture here of what it would look like cut in half. But I want to talk about next lines of longitude. So just I was thinking of fat, longitude, I think of long stringy hair hanging around the planet. And we measure those east or west of the prime meridian. And I want to note that we measure all of these points as time. We actually measure them in degrees and then seconds, or degrees and minutes and then seconds, because when you think about it, we're moving around on the planet the whole time, and so we are trying to figure out where we are at a point in time. So each of these meridians pass down along the planet starting from 0 degrees longitude. And why is 0 degrees running through Greenwich, England? Because that's where they came up with it. So you would write down that the prime meridian, 0 degrees, is in Greenwich, England. And then I included in here the international date line, a picture of the international date line. So that's what it looks like, all these lines of hair hanging down. And notice that they do touch. They intersect. Lines of latitude don't, but they do touch up at the top of the North Pole and down at the South Pole. And we have about 15 degrees in between for time zones. So in the next slide, I wanted to show you time zones. Like Colorado, we're in the Mountain Time Zone. There's East Coast Time Zone. There's West Coast Time Zone. And so these time zones are because the planet is going, like if I was just like somehow standing in place out in space, then the planet would keep moving by me. Like if I just was like, I guess, standing still in space, if that's possible with an alien. Oh, wait, there's an alien. Go back. I would be standing here, but the Earth would keep moving. And then I would be standing here, and then the Earth would be here, and then the Earth would be here, and then the Earth would be here. And so it's moving kind of the opposite. It's moving this way. It's moving this way. But I keep seeing these other sections of the planet because it's rotating. So where do we begin time? Like, where is the new day? Kind of arbitrarily, they made this crazy, wacky line the international date line. So out here in the Pacific is where the day begins. And why is it so wacky and crooked? Well, because there's a bunch of islands out here, and they didn't want to slice an island in half and have half of it the day before and half of it the new day, because can you imagine how confusing it would be to go to school? Like half the island is still on the weekend and the other half has to go to school. So they just tried to bypass islands to have this be the start of the day. So in other words, Japan starts their day before we do. And so if Japan starts its day, then China gets their day, then Europe gets their day, then over here is where the East Coast gets their day, and then finally we get their day, and then it's a new day. I got to pause for a second and take a call. All right, sorry about that. I had to go take a phone call. So I was talking about the important lines of longitude and the time zones. And so one final thing I was going to share. So you're in Los Angeles and you're flying over to Japan. And since the day technically started here, when you fly over to Japan, you've got to turn your watch to the next day. It's actually the next day is starting on over here. And if you fly this direction all the way over here to Australia, and you flew all across like Russia to get to Australia, Russia and Asia, you also lost a day in the air. Like the whole time that you were flying, like the Earth was turning. And so you've lost a day by the time you get here to Australia. They're way ahead of you. So full on day you missed. So next are the different zones. So I'm going to come back to my alien in a second. So we have regions of the Earth that we correspond to how much sun is striking that area and the climate. So Arctic Circle up here, this is the polar zone, which you would label in your map. This part right here, this is called the temperate zone, Temperate. This is like the sweet spot. This is actually where the wealthiest nations, if you can think of like, here's Europe, here's Russia, here's China, here's the United States is over there. The temperate zone is where it's not too hot, not too cold. Then you have the tropics is this huge zone right here. Then we have another temperate zone, which again, wealthy countries have already snagged. So like Australia's snagged the temperate zone. And then lastly, you've got the polar zone down here, which you would label your globe. All right, I think that's it. To get these notes, you are going to copy them off the worksheet down below.